Uhuru Sasa, which means freedom now in Kiswahili. And we were listening to the Brand Nubians' rendition of "Don't Let It Go to Your Head," and that was they sampled Gene Carn, and the Brand Nubians feature Lord Jamar, and we are getting ready to continue our tribute to Martin Luther King Jr. And I picked up a book yesterday. I was in a bookstore in Toronto, and I got for less than $10, I got a book called The Radical King, and it is edited and introduced by Cornel West. And one of the chapters in this book is, well, two of the chapters. One was Dr. King talking about Nehru of India, but what really surprised me was an interview that he did with a talk he had with Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria. And Ahmed Ben Bella, there's pictures of go to Google Images, and you can see a photograph of Dr. King with Ahmed Ben Bella. And when we were growing up in my neighborhood, we loved Ahmed Ben Bella. I think Ahmed Ben Bella, Malcolm X always talked about Ben Bella. And Ben Bella lived to be 99, yeah. But yeah, Ben Bella was Algerian. He always took the right side of the African internationalist position. I mean, he was tight with Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He was tight with Patrice Lumumba. He was also tight with Modibo Keita of Mali, and he was on the radical side of the African question. He was not. They had the Casablanca group and the Monrovia group. The Monrovia group were the liberals, and the Casablanca group were the radicals. And the Casablanca group had African and Arabs. They were the radicals, and the black on black in black Monrovia group, they were the. Let me just say it plain and simple. They were downright sellouts, traitors, bootlickers, toms, and so we're going to listen. And the other thing I wanted to say is that this is Malcolm X speaking in Detroit, and in this particular speech, General Baker is in the audience, and Malcolm makes a statement that you're afraid to bleed, and General hollers, "We'll bleed," and Malcolm says, "I said." Malcolm once again reiterates, "You're afraid to bleed," and General hollers out, "I said we'll bleed." So you'll hear. We're going to listen to Malcolm in Detroit, 1963, talking about the Bandung Conference, which took place in Indonesia in 1955, in April of 1965. So let's listen to MLK, and T in Providence is going to be finishing his documentary on Dr. Martin Luther King, and then we're going to listen to a speech from El Haj Malik El Shabazz Omo Wali in Detroit.
We wait for it to work itself out, it will never be worked out. Freedom only comes through persistent revolt, through persistent agitation, through persistently rising up against the system of evil. The bus protest is just the beginning. Buses are integrated in Montgomery, but that is just the beginning. And don't sit down and do nothing now because the buses are integrated. Because if you stop now, we will be in the dungeons of segregation and discrimination for another 100 years. And our children and our children's children will suffer all of the bondage that we have lived under for years. It never comes voluntarily. We've got to keep on keeping on in order to gain freedom. It never comes like that. It would be fortunate if the people in power had sense enough to go on and give up, but they don't do it like that. It is not done voluntarily, but it is done through the pressure that comes about from people who are oppressed. If there had not been a Gandhi in India with all of his noble followers, India would have never been free. If there had not been an Nkrumah and his followers in Ghana, Ghana would still be a British colony. If there had not been abolitionists in America, both Negro and white, we might still stand today in the dungeons of slavery. It's been because there have been in every period, there are always those people in every period of human history who don't mind getting their necks cut off, who don't mind being persecuted and discriminated and kicked about, because they know that freedom is never given out, but it comes through the persistent and the continual agitation and revolt on the part of those who are caught in the system. Ghana teaches us that. It says to us another thing. It reminds us of the fact that a nation or a people can break a loose from oppression without violence. Nkrumah says in the first 2 pages of his autobiography, which was published on the 6th of March, a great book which you ought to read. He said that he had studied the social systems of social philosophers. He started studying the life of Gandhi and his techniques. And he said that in the beginning he could not see how they could ever get a loose from colonialism without armed revolt, without armies and ammunition rising up. Then he says, after he continued to study Gandhi, continued to study this technique, he came to see that the only way was through non-violent positive action. And he called his program Positive Action. And it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? That here is a nation that is now free, and it is free without rising up with arm and with ammunition. It is free through non-violent means. Because of that, the British Empire will not have the bitterness for Ghana that she has for China, so to speak. Because of that, when the British Empire leaves Ghana, she leaves with a different attitude than she would have left with if she had been driven out by armies. We've got to revolt in such a way that after revolt is over, we can live with people as our brothers and our sisters. Our aim must never be to defeat them or humiliate them. On the night of the state ball, standing up talking with some people, Mordecai Johnson called my attention to the fact that Prime Minister Kwame Nkrumah was out dancing with the Duchess of Kent. I said, isn't this something? Here it is, a once serf, the once slave, now dancing with the Lord on an equal plane. And that is done because there is no bitterness. These two nations will be able to live together and work together because the breaking of loose was through nonviolence and not through violence. The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community. The aftermath of nonviolence is redemption. The aftermath of nonviolence is reconciliation. The aftermath of violence, however, is bitterness. And this is the thing I'm concerned about. Let us fight passionately and unrelentingly for the goals of justice and freedom. Let's be sure that our hands are clean in the struggle. Let us never fight with falsehood and violence and hate and malice, but always fight with love, so that when the day comes that the walls of segregation have completely crumbled in Montgomery, that we will be able to live with people as our brothers and sisters. Oh, my friends, our aim must be not to defeat Mr. Englehart, not to defeat Mr. Sellers and Mr. Gale and Mr. Parks. Our aim must be to defeat the evil that's in them. But our aim must be to win the friendship of Mr. Gale and Mr. Sellers and Mr. Englehart. We must come to the point of seeing that our ultimate aim is to live with all men as brothers and sisters under God and not be their enemies or anything that goes with that type of relationship. And this is one thing that Garner teaches us, that you can break a loose from evil through nonviolence, through a lack of bitterness. And Crumer says in his book, when I came out of prison, I was not bitter toward Britain. I came out merely with a determination to free my people from the colonialism and imperialism that had been inflicted upon them by Britain. But I came out with no bitterness. And because of that, this world will be a better place in which to live. There's another thing that Garner reminds us. I'm coming to the conclusion now. Garner reminds us that freedom never comes on a silver platter. It's never easy. Garner reminds us that whenever you break out of Egypt, you better get ready for stiff battle. You better get ready for some homes to be bombed. You better get ready for some churches to be bombed. You better get ready for a lot of nasty things to be said about you, because you're getting out of Egypt, and whenever you break a loose from Egypt, the initial response of the Egyptian is bitterness. It never comes with ease. It comes only through the hardness and persistence of life. Garner reminds us of that. You better get ready to go to prison. When I looked out and saw the Prime Minister there with his prison cap on that night, that reminded me of that fact, that freedom never comes easy. It comes through hard labor, and it comes through toil. It comes through hours of despair and disappointment. That's the way it goes. That is no crown without a cross. I wish we could get to Easter without going to Good Friday, but history tells us that we got to go by Good Friday before we can get to Easter. That's the long story of freedom, isn't it? Before you get to Cana, you got a Red Sea to confront. You have a hardened heart of a Pharaoh to confront. You have the prodigious hilltops of evil in the wilderness to confront. And even when you get up to the promised land, you have giants in the land. The beautiful thing about it is that there are few people who've been over in the land. They have spied enough to say, even though the giants are there, we can possess the land, because we got the internal fiber to stand up amid anything that we have to face. The road to freedom is a difficult, hard road. It always makes for temporary setbacks. And those people who tell you today that there's more tension in Montgomery than there's ever been are telling you right. But whenever you get out of Egypt, you always confront a little tension. You always confront a little temporary setback. If you didn't confront that, you'd never get out. You must remember that the tensionless period that we like to think of was a period when the Negro was complacently adjusted to segregation, discrimination, insult, and exploitation. And the period of tension is the period when the Negro has decided to rise up and break a loose from that. And this is a peace that we are seeking, not an old negative, obnoxious peace which is merely the absence of tension, but a positive, lasting peace which is the presence of brotherhood and justice. And it is never brought about without this temporary period of tension. The road to freedom is difficult. Finally, Garner tells us that the forces of the universe are on the side of justice. That's what it tells us now. You can interpret Garner any kind of way you want to, But Garner tells me that the forces of the universe are on the side of justice. That night when I saw that old flag coming down and the new flag coming up, I saw something else. That wasn't just an ephemeral, evanescent event appearing on the stage of history, but it was an event with eternal meaning, for it symbolizes something. That thing symbolized to me that an old order is passing away, and a new order is coming into being. An old order of colonialism, of segregation and discrimination is passing away now, and a new order of justice and freedom and goodwill is being born. That's what it said. Somehow the forces of justice stand on the side of the universe, and that you can ultimately trample over God's children and profit by it. I want to come back to Montgomery now, but I must stop by London for a moment. But London reminds me of something. I never will forget the day we went into London. The next day we started moving around this great city. The only city in the world that is almost as large as New York City. Over 8 million people in London, about 8,300,000. New York, about 8,500,000. London larger in area than New York, though. Standing London is an amazing picture. And I never will forget the experience I had. The thoughts that came to my mind, we went to Buckingham Palace. And I looked there at all of Britain, at all of the pomp and circumstance of royalty. And I thought about all of the queens and kings that have passed through here. Look at the beauty of the changing of the guards and all of the guards with their beautiful horses. It's a beautiful sight. Move on from that and go over to Parliament. Move into the House of Lords and the House of Commons. There, with all of its beauty standing up before the world, is one of the most beautiful sights in the world. Then I remember we went on over to Westminster Abbey. I thought about several things when we went in this great church, this great cathedral, the center of the Church of England. We walked around and went to the tombs of the kings and queens buried there. Most of the kings and queens of England are buried right there in the Westminster Abbey. And I walked around. On the one hand, I enjoyed and appreciated the great Gothic architecture of that massive cathedral. I stood there in awe, thinking about the greatness of God and man's feeble attempt to reach up for God. But I thought something else. I thought about the Church of England. My mind went back to Buckingham Palace, and I said that this is the symbol of a dying system. There was a day that the queens and kings of England could boast that the sun never sets on the British Empire. The day when she occupied the greater portion of Australia, the greater portion of Canada. There was a day when she ruled most of China, most of Africa, and all of India. I started thinking about this empire. I started thinking about the fact that she ruled over India one day. Mahatma Gandhi stood there at every hand trying to get the freedom of his people, and they never bowed to it. They decided that they were going to stand up and hold India in humiliation and in colonialism many, many years. I remember we passed by 10 Downing Street. That's the place where the Prime Minister of England lives. I remember that a few years ago a man lived there by the name of Winston Churchill. One day he stood up before the world and said, "I did not become His Majesty's first minister to preside over the liquidation of the British Empire." I thought about the fact that a few weeks ago a man by the name of Anthony Eden lived there. And out of all of his knowledge of the Middle East, he decided to rise up and march his armies with the forces of Israel and France into Egypt. And there they confronted their doom because they were revolting against world opinion. Egypt, a little country. Egypt, a country with no military power. They could have easily defeated Egypt, but they did not realize that they were fighting more than Egypt. They were attacking world opinion. They were fighting the whole Asian African bloc, which is the bloc that now thinks and moves and determines the course of the history of the world. I thought of many things. I thought of the fact that the British Empire exploited India. Think about it. A nation with 400 million people, and the British exploited them so much that out of a population of 400 million, 350 million made an annual income of less than $50 a year. 25 of that had to be used for taxes and the other things of life. I thought about dark Africa and how the people there, they can make $100 a year. They are living very well, they think. 2 shillings a day. 1 shilling is 14 cents. 2 shillings, 28 cents. That's a good wage. That's because of the domination of the British Empire. All of these things came to my mind, and when I stood there in Westminster Abbey with all of its beauty, and I thought about all of the beautiful hymns and anthems that the people would go in there to sing. And yet the Church of England never took a stand against this system. The Church of England sanctioned it. The Church of England gave it moral backing. All of the exploitation perpetuated by the British Empire was sanctioned by the Church of England. But something else came to my mind. God comes in the picture even when the church won't take a stand. God has injected a principle in this universe. God has said that all men must respect the dignity and worth of all human personality. And if you don't do that, I will take charge. Seems this morning that I can hear God speaking. I can hear Him speaking throughout the universe, saying, "Be still and know that I'm God." And if you don't stop, if you don't straighten up, if you don't stop exploiting people, I'm going to rise up and break the backbone of your power. And your power will be no more, and the power of Great Britain is no more. I looked at France. I looked at Britain, and I thought about the Britain that could boast the sun never sets on our great empire. And I say now she has gone to the level that the sun hardly rises on the British Empire because it was based on exploitation. Because the God of the universe eventually takes a stand. And I say to you this morning, my friends, rise up and know that as you struggle for justice, you do not struggle alone, but God struggles with you. And He's working every day. Somehow I can look out. I can look out across the seas and across the universe and cry out, my eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He's trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. Then I think about it because His truth is marching on. And I can sing another chorus. Hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Then I can hear Isaiah again because that has profound meaning to me. That somehow every valley shall be exalted and every hill shall be made low. The crooked places shall be made straight and the rough places plain. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all flesh shall see it together. And that's the beauty of this thing. All flesh shall see it together. Not some from the heights of Park Street and others from the dungeons of slum areas. Not some from the pinnacles of the British Empire and some from the dark deserts of Africa. Not some from inordinate superfluous wealth and others from abject, deadening poverty. Not some white and not some black, not some yellow and not some brown, but all flesh shall see it together. They shall see it from Montgomery. They shall see it from New York. They shall see it from Ghana. They shall see it from China. For I can look out and see a great number, as John saw, marching into the great eternity. Because God is working in this world and at this hour and at this moment. And God grants that we will get on board and start marching with God. Because we got orders now. to break down the bondage and the walls of colonialism, exploitation, and imperialism, to break them down to the point that no man will trample over another man, but that all men will respect the dignity and worth of all human personality. And then we will be in Canaan's freedom land. Moses might not get to see Canaan, but his children will see it. He even got to the mountaintop enough to see it, and that assured him that it was coming. But the beauty of the thing is that there's always a just way to take up his work and take the children on in. And it's there waiting with its milk and honey and with all of the bountiful beauty that God has in store for his children. Oh, what exceedingly marvelous things God has in store for us. Granted, we will follow him enough to gain them. Oh God, our gracious Heavenly Father, help us to see the insights that come from this new nation. Help us to follow thee and all of thy creative work in this world, that somehow we will discover that we are made to live together as brothers, and that it will come in this generation the day when all men will recognize the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Amen.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh. Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for the tree to drop. Here's a strange and bitter cry.
In Bandung, back in, I think, 1954, was the first unity meeting in centuries of black people. And once you study what happened at the Bandung Conference and the results of the Bandung Conference, it actually serves as a model for the same procedure you and I can use to get our problem solved. At Bandung, all the nations came together. They were dark nations from Africa and Asia. Some of them were Buddhists. Some of them were Muslim. Some of them were Christian. Some of them were Confucianists. Some were atheists. Despite their religious differences, they came together. Some were communists. Some were socialists. Some were capitalists. Despite their economic and political differences, they came together. All of them were black, brown, red, or yellow. The number one thing that was not allowed to attend the Bandung Conference was the white man. He couldn't come.
Of the 50s, with the era of the third world countries fighting colonialism and winning because their neighbors helped them. The case of Mozambique, the case of Angola, Guinea-Bissau, the case of Zimbabwe, the case of South Africa, when the African majority decided to fight racism and colonialism, they found that their neighbors, like Tanzania, for example, like Ghana, like Egypt, like Guinea, these countries did not have a lot to give, but whatever they had, they shared. And that was really instrumental in training the first group of liberators, the first group of freedom fighters, to train on how to use the arms and then get them back to their countries, smuggle some guns across the borders, and get them to start the movement. In the liberation struggle, you have to know that time is on your side. The enemy is going to get tired eventually, and they have to give up. This happened, and we know history speak of it today.
Yeah, man, we'll do it right now, you know what I say? Liberation style, grab loving out the place. Yo, tomorrow, come in.
Yeah, throw your fists up in the air, yeah, we right here. Rebel music in your area, Philly to Nigeria, Brooklyn to Haiti, Ghana to Liberia. We run things, a vision, not rude boy, superior. We on fire, burn your one test, we champion sound, your loud down, respect me. Block that sound, my people are gonna get free, and we machete them like revolution in Haiti. This is motherland music, Mau gorilla, heavyweight movement, peace, land, and leadership. Take back what they owe. That's what the mission is. We building the God's projects. The pyramid is serious right now. You all know what time it is. Stop killing ourselves and resurrect our villages. I'm down for liberation. The question is who you running with. Round here, the ice talk and how you running it. Wanted for the people, we feeding them by the hundreds. Give them free breakfast and clinics just like the Panthers did. Them not ready. Liberation ain't no accident. Let's get it in action. This is revolution happening.
I can't accept being loaded with lies. We gotta
the father of African nationalism, Nkrumah gave funds to other nationalist movements and preached the message across the continent.
This mid-20th century is Africa's. This decade is the decade of African independence. Forward then to independence. To independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
They also decided to try to help each other by providing foreign aid, especially China. I'll give you one example where the French decided to conduct a plebiscite in French-speaking Africa to decide whether they wanted to remain under the colonial rule for a while until they are ready to get independence, or they want to get independence and break away from France. The only country that did that was Guinea under Sékou Touré. And the French decided to punish him by stripping the country from everything that they could move, including doors, faucets, bulbs, chairs, tables, anything that they could move, they moved it out of the country. So when the French left, the country was stripped of all its financial resources or all its material possessions. At that time, African and Asian leaders, some of them were committed to uphold the independence of Guinea by shipping food, by airlifting equipment. They managed to get the country to stand on its own feet without the French. The French wanted to prove that the country like Guinea, with its limited financial resources, could survive without them. And they were absolutely wrong, because Sékou Touré managed to keep the country together under his leadership and became one of the most prominent leaders in Africa that fought colonialism and imperialism everywhere, wherever he could.
South-South unity inherently threatened the interests of the West, which sought to maintain its dominance over land and labor. Despite the unity forged at Bandung, Western interests encroached on the newly independent countries. In concert with the former colonial powers, the U.S. intervened, undermining the self-determination of the young nations. For example, the U.S. backed sabotage missions by Chinese nationalists from Burma into communist China, cooperated with the assassination of the democratically elected Patrice Lumumba in the Congo, and backed the French reinvasion of Vietnam. Across the former colonized world, fragile stability was undermined by a series of coups d'etats, assassinations, and outright invasions.
I believe that Africa would have been better off today if it was united under one government. Africa has a lot of resources. At that time, they did not have a larger population. They did not have the many problems that they are encountering today, like HIV/AIDS. So, in fact, it would have been really a good time for African countries to unite and use their resources wisely and share it.
Given that today throughout Asia, poverty remains rampant and gaps in wealth grow, and that the theft of Africa's wealth remains key to the hegemony of the West, or that for African America, the crisis of economic instability has been described as permanent, there remains much we can learn from the need for a Bandung then and similar unification now. As then President Sukarno of Indonesia exclaimed in 1955, we today also need unity and diversity.
This is Dr. Mohammed Al-Khawas at the University of the District of Columbia.
For Black Agenda Radio, I'm Jared Ball.
I'm Michael Haack.
And I'm Netfa Freeman. And this has been a commemoration of the Asian African Conference held in Bandung, Indonesia in 1955, also known as the Bandung Conference.